I'll just give a brief introduction to this thing that we're calling the Open Data Network. It means a few things to a few people, and in many ways it's just getting started. So for that reason, I'd like to just start with a framing of what we mean what it means here, and then I'm going to turn it over to some of the nation's most fun innovators in the world of data to show how it actually works. So if I can get some assistance from the back to briefly transition over to my laptop here, I will do the fastest product demo in the history of product demos to show a bit of the Open Data Network. So here it is. It's an experiment. It is a website, opendatanetwork.com. Of course, you're all encouraged to check it out. And this was created to provide a platform for a new internet, to liberate the network effects of data, so that as every new data set comes onto the platform, each additional data set is more valuable than the one that came before. So how do we do that? Well, there's a few aspects of this platform that are very helpful to three aspects of the data problem: data discovery, data cleaning, and then data insights. For fun, if you wanted to take a look at how we're starting to explore the possibilities and say, I don't know, a housing-oriented business, such as maybe Zillow or SiteComply, which I will introduce in a second, you could use a fun little tool here to basically say, you know what, I'm going to have an idea for the kind of information that will help, I don't know, maybe my customers live the American dream and own that first house. Well, if you go through this little explorer, we're actually learning from the questions people are answering about the data that they're looking for. And it's helping us to basically come up with an improved search. Because I'll tell you right now, if you Google all permits in America, you're not going to get a good answer. And we're actually working with Google to help figure some of that out. But in this little example, you can see, well, we still provide you the ability to go straight into the data, provide some feedback. But as an example of the types of easy innovations that this provides, this morning, someone said, I think it was somebody from Washington State, it was sitting over here, said, is there not a census for state data? How can I even begin to understand what data sets are across all Socrata customers? And of course, I'm in the back of the room thinking, I should tell, no, I'll bring it up later. Well, the good news is we actually have something. Here it is. This is a census that is programmatically updated. With much respect to the other census that was shown earlier today, this one actually pulls from your open data portals. And so, for example, if you're a business looking for housing data in, I don't know, Alameda County, you can have a live feed to at least get the data on how much information is out there. This is that old mantra, if I can only manage what I can measure. Well, it's a census. It's the beginning measurement to see what information actually exists across all Socrata customers. For fun, is anyone here from New York State? Got a couple? Well, New York, you are the most popular open data sets across all the tools here. You can click into them to show, but basically the top 3 data sets across all Socrata portals happen to be from New York State. So congratulations, you are the most popular open data portal in America. But from this basic insight, you can see us beginning to experiment with how do we break down this basic question of open data that you may have to know who the publisher is at the point of search. What if you don't care? Should you have to care where the data necessarily comes from if you're just really looking for that source information? And so with that idea, the Open Data Network itself is not just a website. Really, I'm sharing this with you as an example of the type of early experiment for what we're doing. The real value is in the community. And for that reason, I'm proud to introduce a couple of innovators. We are not able to be joined by Joy Bonaguro, the Chief Data Officer of San Francisco. She regretfully cannot join this discussion. But the other people that we did invite are here. We have Louis from Zillow and Ross from SiteComply. These innovative businesses are going to talk a bit about what really the most important aspect of the Open Data Network, and that's the community that we have openly assembled to see how we can work together from all aspects of the open data ecosystem, from the publishers, from the consumers, from the innovators, from the technologists, to see how can we actually improve this thing so that as more people participate, we can extract exponential more value out of it. And so with that, I'm going to turn it over to Louis. You want to come up here? Let me flash this on the screen and give you the mic to share a bit of your story about what the Open Data Network means. So I'll turn it over to Louis here.
Hello, how are you? Thanks for having me here. For those who are not familiar with Zillow, we have monthly more than 80 million users, unique users coming to Zillow to buy, to sell, to check their value as a homeowner, to improve their homes, to get a mortgage, or to rent a home. We have the mission of providing, empowering all these users with data, home-related data, to make the most important decisions in most of Americans, which is buying a home or selling a home. So we actually built our site with your data, with public data, with MLS and brokers' data and consumers' data. We build our service with this data to enable these consumers to make these decisions. So that's what Zillow is. And we believe that we are just beginning this journey. That's why we started to work in the open data network with Socrata, because we believe there are tons of data that could improve all of these processes that are available, sometimes in paper, sometimes some counties have the data, but it's not standard, it's not easy accessible for us. So we started to work on one project specifically, which is permit data. So we met with different companies, different leaders, and we said, okay, what are the data that is important for us on permits specifically? Let's create standards. Let's create what is really critical information, what is recommended, how we will plan to use this information, and how this will impact the citizens of those counties. So here, what I try to do is try to bring an example of what we could do if we had permit data. So this is only one example of what the things that we could imagine having this information. Again, I want to emphasize that all our site is built upon these millions of data sources that we're collecting and cleaning and producing products for that. So if you're familiar with Zillow, this is a home. Again, as I mentioned, we have 83 million users, unique users visited last month, September. And they are looking at this home. This is a home in Seattle. If you're a buyer, imagine yourself, we call it Beth the buyer. If you're Beth the buyer and you are looking at homes, you want to know every single detail of a home. They look at the pictures first, it's the most important thing, price, but then you get deeper into the site, into the product, into the home. So imagine you're in this home. Sorry, I will use my...
This is what happens when you give a Chromebook to a Mac user. Okay. Perfect. Want me to zoom up?
Yeah.
Okay.
So imagine you are trying to understand more about this home. You are in love with this home. You want to know everything what's happening. Imagine, here is an example of what if we bring the permit data into the table. For a buyer, this is incredibly useful. If you have the seller saying, I did this new extra bedroom, but we don't have the permit for that, then at least as a buyer, you will question and learn more about that. You will ask more questions about that. Also, if the permit is still open, if you're a buyer, you need to know all this information. So we believe this has a huge impact for buyers if we provide this information and public available in every single home of America. Now, if you're a seller and you're planning to sell your home and you spend a lot of time remodeling your kitchen, adding new plumbing, changing the entire plumbing, adding a new roof, and then adding another bathroom, you want to show off all the things that you did. Because people are comparing based on Zillow and they check the comparables, but they don't know that you did all of this stuff. Because we are getting data from public data, from agents, but sometimes this information, they did all of this stuff, it's not in our database. So if we had this information, we could easily help the seller to show off what they did. For example, one of the key things that Zillow has is their Sestimate, what we call Sestimate, which is an estimated value of your home. We launched Zillow with that, only with that information. And every single person goes and checks their Sestimate over time because it's the biggest asset that most Americans have. So if you really spend $50,000 doing a new bedroom, what we want to do is to incorporate that into the Sestimate. So imagine you see this is the Sestimate chart. And if we can plot this information into the values, and you can see, okay, there's a bump when you add a new bedroom, there's a bump when you do a new remodel, then consumers, the buyer, can see, okay, they did this, and so the comps of this home is not just similar homes that you put here, but other homes that added another bedroom and remodeled the kitchen. So we see a big value for sellers too. The final point is with homeowners. Homeowners, first, they want to decide whether to remodel or not. So if we had permit information, we could create return on investment calculators. So imagine you have, okay, should I remodel my kitchen or not? So we can have, if we put this permit data in conjunction of all for sale data and all the economic trends, we can actually give you a very accurate value of what a kitchen remodel will do in your value. So we can help empower consumers to make decisions. Should I buy a new home? Should I remodel my kitchen? Should I just stay where I am? So we believe that this is a big tool for homeowners too. Also, we hear a lot from our consumers. They want to know what else is happening in the neighborhood. So if we had the permits of what are the commercial constructions happening nearby, buyers can make better decisions, and homeowners can understand what's happening. We believe that's a big thing to offer to our consumers. So this is just an example they wanted to show to you of the things that we are working with Socrata and the team. We are trying to create these standards because, again, our mission is to empower consumers to make the best decision with home-related data. So we want to put all this information at their fingertips so they can make good decisions. Again, I would love to talk more about with some of you what are the other ideas of data. We have a long list of things that we could add to our database of all homes that would significantly improve buyers, sellers, homeowners, renters, home improvers across the nation. So that's, again, an example, and we'll be happy to answer your questions.
Thank you. Quick show of hands, by the way. How many of you have been to Zillow.com before? Everybody. Okay, so there you go. So you're part of that 80 million, right? So this is the proof of the impact of open data. Data by itself is useless. You cannot eat it, you cannot drink it. But when open data gets in the hands of innovative, really global companies like Zillow, that's where the value happens, because you're putting the information in the hands of people when they're making that key decision of buying a house, selling a house, figuring out if they should improve it. So thank you so much for that introduction. Now I'm going to turn it over to one of our other favorites in the world of open data innovation. So SiteComply, based out of New York City. Turn over to Ross to give a bit of an introduction.
Thank you.
Oh, yes. Okay, sure.
Good afternoon. So if there's one theme that I want you all to take away from this panel, it's that of all the open data, the real estate data is the really important part. No, I'm just kidding. Actually, it just so happens by coincidence that both Louis and I are using open data for real estate purposes, but SiteComply is using it for a very different reason. The theme that I want you to take away from what we're about to talk about is that I need, and Louis needs, you guys to create value in the world, to create value for citizens. And I actually believe that you, as open data champions, as governments, also need our participation to help effectuate the changes that you are trying to make using open data in the community. So let me tell you a quick story about a gentleman named Nick. Nick I met back in 2008. And Nick, as you can see from the hands on the head, he's not having a great day. Why? Nick is a gentleman who's a code consultant in the city of New York. Specifically, he focuses on elevator code. And Nick's an engineer. Nick spends his day talking to owners and managers, talking to elevator service companies, talking to elevator builders, and making sure that those elevators, the more than 60,000 of them in the city of New York, are operating smoothly, are operating safely, are providing a good quality of life for the citizens of New York, and are running. And some of these elevators in New York, if you've ever been to New York, there are elevators that have been in constant operation for over 75 years. And I've actually seen those. It's pretty neat. Nick, however, told me a quick story when I met him back in 2008 about how his job has changed over the years. Anybody from New York, New York government? So you guys familiar with this? Very much so. What's that? Sorry, Andrew. So Nick is an engineer. He liked to spend his day doing engineering type of things, whatever those may be. But over the years, Nick has spent more and more of his time hunting and pecking for data, for government data, to try to figure out information on violations, on permits, on inspections. And he is interacting with websites such as what you see here. That's the New York City Department of Buildings website, to spend time compiling reports for his clients on their elevator compliance. So he's going through these reports, and what his life really looks like is this. Nick is not only focused on maybe one building, but he's interacting with clients who have 10, 20, 100 buildings, buildings that if they didn't exist, you would notice in the New York City skyline. And what he's trying to deal with is the litany of regulation that these elevators are under. And I want to make sure that I'm very clear. I don't think that's necessarily a bad thing, and Nick doesn't necessarily think that's a bad thing, but Nick has a challenge. Nick is challenged with the data, and Nick's clients, the owners and managers in these buildings, are challenged with the data. So let's take a quick look at what the relationship between Nick and the New York City government is. So here's Nick over here on the left-hand side. And Nick is the representative person who is a citizen, or many citizens form a community. I mean, what does Nick want? Nick wants, at his core, a better quality of life. Over here on the right-hand side is government. And ultimately, as we start to think about it, what is government trying to do? Well, government is trying to provide better quality of lives. So their interests are aligned. They're all trying to accomplish the same thing, but there's some specifics in those wants and those needs that differs, and that's where maybe the communication gap breaks down. So here's Nick on the left-hand side communicating with the government on the right-hand side. They want the same things. Nick's clients want the same things. Nick's community wants the same things, and the government wants the same thing. But they're unable to communicate effectively, and the result there is that Nick and Nick's clients have a hard time maintaining elevators, providing a good quality of life, and the government has a hard time ensuring that the quality of life for citizens, for folks who ride in the elevators, for the buildings, for the community in New York City, is good. Why does that exist? Well, to Nick, what is a better quality of life is less work friction, meaning that his job is easier, more leisure time, and more money. At the end of the day, it's sort of sad, but in America, if you think about what our interests are from a job, that's oftentimes what we're trying to accomplish. On the right-hand side, we have the government, and what is the government trying to do? It's trying to ensure safety across the community. It's a wonderful thing. I think no one can argue that that's a wonderful thing. It needs to fund programs to change the community and to ensure happy and healthy lifestyles, and to overall create a happy community. And one of the challenges here between Nick and the government is that what Nick is trying to do to try to create less work friction, he is very much about getting the data in an easy fashion so that he can go home to his wife and kids. And those are his incentives. On the right-hand side, the government constituents are looking to accomplish their goals. And when creating laws, when enforcing laws, and when putting data out there in the way that it was put out 9 years ago or 8 years ago, it wasn't necessarily put out in a way that the purpose was to make Nick's life easier. It was put out to be able to enforce the laws and to inform the public. That's where SiteComply comes in. So let me show you a quick video on what SiteComply does, and then we'll talk about how SiteComply has sort of changed the relationship between Nick and the government.
Okay, so real estate is tough business, especially in New York City. Violations, fines, inspections, complaints, they cost money, result in lost revenue and time, encumber the refinancing or sale of a building, and increase risk. Whether you're an owner, property manager, or service contractor, large or small, ensuring that your property or portfolio of properties is compliant with local building laws is challenging, expensive, and critical to your business. The problem is there's just no easy way to stay on top of these things. I mean, sure, you can sift through the information on the city's websites and reams of paperwork all day, but that's a manual process, and you need an automated solution so nothing falls through the cracks. Yeah, because failing to comply in a timely and accurate manner will result in costly fines and compliance headaches that keep you from focusing on your more important business. If only you could get up-to-the-minute compliance information on your portfolio available on demand. If only you could be alerted when major problems such as stop work orders occur as soon as they happen. If only you could be reminded of inspections before they're due so you don't get hit with expensive fines. Don't worry, there's a solution, and it's called SiteComply. SiteComply is built to save you the money, time, and resources involved in tracking a building's compliance, whether you own, manage, or service it. Okay, here's how SiteComply works. When you sign up, just tell SiteComply which buildings you want to monitor. SiteComply will remember and keep track of your portfolio of properties, eliminating the need to wade through pages upon pages of government websites each time you need to look something up. Your portfolio is now just a click away. Next, using super secret technology, SiteComply automatically and continuously compiles the latest compliance information about your portfolio in one convenient place, including violations, inspections, and complaints. Always updated with current information, SiteComply can even fetch paper reports such as FDNY and other offline violations, making them part of your digital file and accessible from any web connection. SiteComply will even alert your team via email or calendar reminder when critical issues occur at any of your properties, such as stop work orders and work without a permit notices, as well as upcoming or overdue inspections on your mechanical equipment. With SiteComply, you'll never be surprised again by a missed inspection, an unexpected penalty, or an unnecessary fine, because alerts, reminders, reports, and helpful forms and reference material for your portfolio are brought right to you, so you can focus on fixing problems, not finding them. Listen, New York real estate is tough business, and it's only getting tougher. With fines increasing dramatically, compliance laws becoming stricter, and the need to reduce costs and risks to your assets now greater than ever, you'll wonder how you ever ran your business without SiteComply.
Great. So the world has changed for Nick, thanks to SiteComply and thanks to open data. Nick's life went from that left-hand mess to the right-hand, neat, wonderful, frictionless world. And I think the important point here, where I talked about before, where I need you, and I think that you need companies like mine and companies like Zillow, we have created over the years what I like to think about as the open data triangle. We have government who has their wants and their needs to be able to create a happier, healthier society. We have Nick, who is trying to accomplish his work, and we have companies like SiteComply and companies like Zillow who have come in and been able to take some of that data to transform it and to provide real value. And in the middle here, we have what I like to think about is the data ecosystem, and that's where sort of Socrata comes in and can be a little bit of the middleman and then the provider. And what has been the result? Well, quite clearly, if you're familiar with New York City real estate on the left-hand side, that is the landscape of the customers that we serve. That's basically a who's who of real estate in New York City. On the right-hand side, you can see that in the last couple years, we have helped over 1 billion square feet of real estate operate safer and more efficiently, which has helped the government realize its vision, has also helped Nick realize his vision. It's improved the lives of 10,000 real estate professionals, have created over 30 jobs right in New York City.
Well, thank you. Thank you for sharing that perspective. Of course, we love it when people are able to do great things with our information and actually help people. So what's going to happen now, I'm going to do a quick lightning round. The panelists do not know what questions I'm about to ask. I'm going to ask you both a couple of really quick questions. I need you to answer at the Twitter length, so no more than 140 characters worth of words to both of you. And then we're going to open it up to everybody here. So first question, let's go to Louis, since you have a chance to speak last. If all digital open data was gone tomorrow, just vanished because electrons don't work anymore, would that be bad for your business?
We'll destroy it.
Okay, same question.
It would not be great.
Okay. What is your favorite open data city or other government as a publisher? You can say there's a lot to choose from. You can just point. That's okay.
Seattle.
They base there. That's okay. Who's your favorite?
So we're a New York-based business. I have to say New York, but any government who is putting data online in open format, we love, because we're huge supporters of the movement.
I think it was like 145 characters, but good. Okay, I'll take that. Okay, so what is a network effect?
Facebook.
Good. Okay, I like that. Yeah. So same question.
Network effect is you guys publishing data, companies like me and Nick working to do stuff with it, and learning, all three of us learning from each other to create a synergistic, wonderful effect.
I thought of another question. Do data standards or cleansed information, does that help catalyze network effects?
Totally. And that's why we're working with Open Data Network.
This is a controversial one, because I'm a huge proponent of data standards if that is a priority. However, I think the number one thing that governments can do is actually just put more data out there to be consumed.
Okay, and with that, I'd love to open it up to folks here to see what questions, comments, or concerns you have about companies like Zillow and SiteComply being able to help people with your data. Who would like to ask any questions? Please. Andrew in the front. Andrew and Andrew. Oh, yeah.
So I guess this is a two-level question, right? So first is perhaps for you two companies, but then also for the Open Data Network in general. So I think one of the things is with data standards is really getting around data normalization. And so like taking information from a lot of different governments and trying to represent it in the same way. And, you know, we know of taxonomic problems where like, you know, homicide in one place does not mean the same as homicide in another place, right? So how are you guys tackling that issue and how sensitive to it are you? And then second is how deeply is the Open Data Network going to get involved in those kinds of thinking?
Yep, sure.
So I mentioned standards would be amazing, but we receive more than 1,000 sources of data. And we have a huge team cleaning, standardizing, and I think that's the value of Zillow. That we're trying to put that data and we say, okay, in this county they say this and this means something similar to this. And we have a huge team doing that. So I agree with Ross. The idea is to have the data first and then thinking about standardization. But of course, standardization can boost that and we can make it immediately. We have projects under our backlog of amazing power for consumers, but it would take more than 6 months to put it on for consumers, so we prioritize other things. So it's a balance. We are taking tons of things that are not standard, but if it's standard, it will be faster.
So as a private company, I mean, we spend a lot of money on standardizing and formatting and synthesizing the data that comes in. And I would say the number one challenge that we have is not actually around standards because that's, in my opinion, one of the easier parts, although as you get more and more data sets, that becomes more and more challenging. But it's more in not only understanding the data, but ensuring data efficacy and data quality. I think the number one challenge that we oftentimes have on that is we'll see a data set that was published and there might be something fundamentally wrong with it or something fundamentally missing or the like. And I would say that the most successful relationships we've had with data actually and Socrata data is where we have worked with government agencies to help them better understand their data and to help us better understand their data and to help them QA their data and to trade stories about their data. Because it's not lost on me that every time I ask a government agency for data, it's an expensive thing for them to care. And for, I shouldn't say to care, that's a little bit harsh, but for them to fulfill my request. But oftentimes, the partnerships that are great is they look at me and they say, I can give you the data, go synthesize it because you have people and it's valuable to you. Can you give me that data back and can you inspect it for me and tell me what's going on and can you QA it for me? And I say, I would love to do that because it creates a synergistic network effect. It helps my business grow and it takes some of the burden off of the governments.
And I'll just give the perspective from the Open Data Network, and I'll be very transparent, actually, in the spirit of what we do, in terms of one of the things we learned when we launched the Open Data Network in basically a private beta a few months ago. We started with this idea that there would be 3 types of data products that people wanted. The highly super cleansed, super compliant. The standard is perfection enabled. That was one idea. In the housing sector that we started with, because we saw that as a common opportunity across the majority of our partners. Second type was, well, lightly cleansed, just help you find it. And the third type was, well, just public data anywhere in the world, and we'll compete with Google, and we'll see if you can help you find something. I really thought that the highly compliant, super cleansed data was what a great deal. Actually, Alita, can I have your help to switch over to the computer for a second? I thought that a lot of these companies were going to be wanting the super compliant information, but in fact, they didn't. They wanted more of the, we'll help you just help me find the information. Oh, it's not actually coming up. Well, here, I'll just do it like this. So you can see a list of some of the partners that are, some of the companies that are working with us as a open participatory aspect of the Open Data Network. One of the biggest problems is actually not even necessarily the standards, because at the final mile, there's always some degree of customization. One of the hardest parts is just discovery. We can't even get to the nirvana of standards until we can actually find every permit in America, for example. And that part seems to be a lot of the early focus for a lot of the companies that are openly part of this community. We're working together. We're all trying to openly, for no money being exchanged anywhere, just trying to find a better way to even find this information so we can do great things with it. Other questions, please. Oh, sorry, over here.
So you've already addressed it a little bit, the idea of this closed feedback loop where you're consuming our data as I'm a municipal government, Kansas City, Missouri, and then helping us refine that. And I think you mentioned that SiteComply is willing to help aggregate that and push data back to us. I would ask the same thing of Zillow. I know as we try to measure some of our successes in economic development, you know, we've periodically gone out to the Zillow site to try to figure out some aggregate data on just our housing conditions and our real estate market. So just interested to know how we can consume the data back from you, and also what role Socrata might play in that closed loop.
Yes, we have a large team of economists that the only thing they do is to produce reports that will be useful for government agencies and counties and cities and states, and that's why we have a team that is dedicated to that. So we actually create data, a lot of data that institutions use. After we clean all the data, aggregate the data, and put in even Excel or whatever the format you want, you can pull certain data. This is for the majority of the data we have. We have other data we don't have this exactly the loop that you were describing. Give me the data, I will check what are the missing spot, and we'll get back to you. There are a couple of examples. We don't do that often, but we could. If we believe the data is super important for the users, we will definitely evaluate that option too.
And from our perspective as a neutral convener, I encourage anyone here, you're welcome to join the conversation. So the website's on the screen. It's opendatanetwork.com/join. Should be easy enough. And just let us know that you want to be part of that discussion, and we're investing our own, their resources and also our blood, sweat, and tears. Make sure that you can get that type of feedback and be part of that conversation.
Okay, I think we got time for just one quick one. Yeah.
Oh, man.
Sorry.
Last question.
Okay, quick question. So as a mid-sized city, we have data available. I'm sure that you'd love to get your hands on it. For things that we're not publishing today, such as building permits, for example, we can build that. We can build the data set in any format you'd like. So I understand you're not looking to tell us how to design our data, build a schema, and produce the standards, but basically we'll build. If you have a preference, we can do that. So is there somebody that has this collection of not just these two companies, but whether it's Socrata or the Open Data Network, that would be able to host or publish schemas and standards for us?
Well, that's exactly what we're working on right now, building permits. And the idea, we've met a lot of companies, and we're trying to define what are the critical information we want and have a standard. But again, the idea is to have the information. We will provide that standard, because if you can do whatever the options are, we know that if you create that standard, it will be immediately online in any of these companies. So that's exactly where we're working right now. We're trying to define what are the most critical information that we need just to start to consume it, the recommended fields, and then optional. So yes, exactly your question is what we are working right now.
I guess I gotta say, it's really fun just to watch that for a second. You see, I don't know if you all noticed what happened there. So about 20 people worked on something at first that was a little hard, and because of what we basically decided in a Google group listserv in the past few weeks, it's now going to be easier for another publisher to get their information into the hands of these distributors. So the next person who asks a question after you will be a lot easier, because hopefully this information that I can email you after this session will just be able to find it themselves. And then that will be even easier for the next person to publish. And then after that, it just gets easier and easier, faster and faster. And that's that scale that has been, frankly, missing from the open data ecosystem for so long. Again, we're just getting started with this. It's a ragtag, skunk works group of volunteers. But ultimately, we have the design to have this really tip over to become a crowdsourced platform where everyone can ultimately benefit from these network effects for open data. So I want to thank everybody so much for your questions and participation. I want to thank Louis from Zillow and Ross from SiteComply for their insights and for what they're doing to make open data valuable for people. Ian Kalin again from Socrata. Thank you all very much.
All right.